All right, thank you guys for tuning in. We are the Fantasy Forecasters. We're going to start off our Week 4 videos here with obviously the big fantasy news. Obviously the biggest news this week is the injury in San Francisco. Jimmy Garoppolo is now out for the season with a torn ACL. So what's that mean for fantasy? Well, it means C.J. Beathard is your new starting San Francisco quarterback unless they decide to pick up some random people.
Don't sign him.
Don't sign C.J. Beathard. If anything, sign the defenses that will now be playing San Francisco, including the Arizona Cardinals.
There you go. Nice little turn to finally get your Arizona.
I was gonna say, how many weeks have you been behind this Arizona Cardinals defense?
If only he was here last week, that would have been a great setup last week because they actually didn't do bad against Chicago.
So that's the biggest news ultimately this week is Jimmy Garoppolo being out. I know that's a huge blow to everybody in fantasy. I still think Matt Breida still has the production from the dink and dunk passing games from C.J. Beathard. Ultimately, not that Pierre Garçon has done much this season, but he takes a big hit.
Good one.
Dante Pettis.
Dante Pettis, though, disappointed so far.
Now the other person Kittle that I actually kind of like is Kittle because they're going to be throwing the short passes, the checkdowns, and we all know when a young, inexperienced quarterback comes in, usually their go-to is the tight ends and the running back.
I'm pretty sure Beathard did it last year anyways with the tight ends.
Yeah, he went to a lot of his. It wasn't just Kittle though.
No, because Kittle was a backup guy.
It was what's his face? That was the brother Selleck. It was Garrett Selleck was last year's big one that he passed.
So no, I agree. Kittle's a good one because unless Beathard changed up his
second year,
maybe I doubt it.
That rookie's gonna do something.
Hey, speaking of rookies. So far, we saw Josh Allen get a great start against the Minnesota Vikings last week, and that was actually our first rookie start of the year.
No, Sam Darnold.
Sorry, Sam Darnold. No one remembers him. Like, no one remembers Sam Darnold.
He's like a 35-year veteran.
Yeah, also Sam Darnold has already been starting. So now we got Josh Allen with his second week coming in for Buffalo. I don't think it's a good start against Green Bay, but I mean, everyone was saying that against the Vikings as well. But this week it was also announced that we have two new rookie quarterbacks getting the go-ahead this week. Obviously, one of them was Thursday Night Wonder and Baker Mayfield. Mayfield came in midway through the game. Looked great against the Jets and took them to a victory, and they got their beer.
They did.
They got their beer.
They finally got the beer.
And he goes into you don't have it. Oakland. He goes into Oakland this week. It's Oakland. I don't need it. He goes into Oakland this week, so a very favorable matchup for him. I know. I just picked Oakland. We don't need to talk about that. So also announced this week, Josh Rosen, who is the Arizona Cardinals quarterback, not the Buffalo Bills. Call back! Call back! Josh Rosen got thrown in with the final 2 minutes, well, 5 minutes technically, but he got thrown into the 2-minute drill and...
It literally looked like he was thrown in.
In all honesty, against the Chicago Bears, it was kind of questionable. I mean, they took Bradford out just because Bradford was not producing.
It's questionable because they didn't put Mike Glennon in there to take over.
No.
Revenge game.
Arizona has a matchup this week against
Seattle.
Was it Seattle?
Arizona versus Seattle.
There you
Do
go.
you already forget your picks again?
I do. I really do. Not a terrible matchup for him. It's still not anything.
How many rookies would you sign? Quarterback wise, which ones would you sign and which ones wouldn't you?
Well, obviously Sam Darnold's not a bad sign right now, even though the Jets are kind of really choppy, but he's been getting a lot of late touchdowns since they normally have been trailing in games except Thursday. And
they trailed.
I would not say Mayfield just yet because I don't want to basically jump on the whole bandwagon after 1 week, which was half a game.
A little over half.
And obviously, I think Josh Allen's not going to continue that. And again, Josh Rosen, time will tell. But Sam Darnold, I just insulted by not even mentioning him. But Sam Darnold, if he's still out there, I just think he's a nice little pickup.
Which leads me to the other big news story, and more so, there's 2 trades in there. More so, fantasy-wise, only one of them is really relevant. Although there are leagues where defensive backs can be signed. So 2 big trade rumors came out early on Monday, technically late Sunday. First one, Earl Thomas.
That was during the game.
During the game. Actually, Cowboys coaches apparently said be prepared to come to Dallas on Monday. So he's tied to Dallas there. He didn't say his goodbyes. He didn't sound like he's going to get traded, but he sounded concerned that he was in his interview after the game. Well, apparently the big push today is the Kansas City Chiefs, who could use all the help they can on that defense. So I guess it could benefit defense a little bit there for the Chiefs, but that defense is so bad right now. Even with Earl Thomas being added, I don't know if I'd add them as your defense back. The other big one is Steelers started fielding offers for LeVeon Bell this weekend. Before, they weren't even listening to him and sending him away. They were fielding him. Does that mean he's going to be traded right away? It's doubtful. They say maybe closer to the trade deadline. But with that, the biggest team that's in the list right now is the New York Jets. Although reports do say that multiple teams have made offers at this point, but the Jets seem to be the name that keeps popping up with it. With all being said, how's that for fantasy? I don't think the Earl Thomas trade is going to do much for fantasy, no matter who he gets traded to, unless it's a top line defense. Unless it's like the Rams. Out of nowhere, the Rams pull another defensive player in and become the must-have defense. I don't think he's going to basically add, like, say, to a Kansas City Chiefs defense, make them a must-add. But Le'Veon Bell, at this point, he might be, and it's kind of leading us into our next one, he might be a buy low at this point. This will be the 3rd week that he doesn't play. If you have that roster spot for him, you may be able to get him for a pretty cheap value at this point. Make the offers for him to get him your team. Who knows? He could even come back to the Steelers within the next couple weeks, and there you go. You have a strong starter right away if you have the roster spot. If not, it's not worth it right now because you don't know. He may not be back till even after week 10 at this point.
Even if he comes back to Pittsburgh, I don't know if he's going to be a solid starter because I think they're really starting to push towards Connor.
Yeah, but if he comes back and he signs that contract and stuff, he's going to...
But I think he's going to take a much bigger hit in fantasy than...
It may not be, like I said, it may be more split carries than what it would have been if he came at the beginning, but I still think he's feature back at that point. I still think he's the fantasy value back at that point.
Well, the other thing, too, is he's been out of football for how long?
Probably since about...
So, I mean...
Did he play in the playoffs last year?
Yes,
he did.
But you talk about football shape, I mean, he's not training. He's throwing rap parties for his album that just dropped. Like, so it doesn't. It tells
buy the album.
Yeah,
it's great. It's lit.
I've not listened to it, and I won't listen to it. But he's not training. You know, he's not working out. So even when he does come back, it's going to take him a couple of weeks to get up to game speed. So are you really comfortable starting Le'Veon Bell right away, his first game back, when there are other options?
Probably not, but I mean, if you're buying low for him, you at that point should already have running backs that you have to start on your team. You're not trading for Le'Veon Bell to make him your starter right away. You're trading on him to save for hopefully when you're making a playoff run late in the season, you have that extra guy who could step up and take it. So hopefully if you're trading for Bell, you're not expecting him to be your number one bell cow right away. Bell cow. Right away because he's not going to be there for you.
Cowboys.
Cowboys. Illuminati confirmed.
I guess.
Sean, you can jump right into the next one too.
I've been talking.
Well, fine, I'll go into it. So the next one, well, I saw that you had the same one as me, so I'll change mine a little bit.
Well, I can do this one too. I'm just doing a different guy.
Well, that's fine. So the next one we're going to do a buy low, sell high thing right now, to where we all come up with a player that maybe has struggled a little bit 3 weeks in that you may be able to get for a lot cheaper than what he would have. And then a sell high, somebody who's had a monster couple of weeks and it's the perfect week to get rid of him. In fact, mine may be a pretty good 1-for-1 trade right there. Who knows? So my buy low right now is David Johnson. He hasn't looked like the David Johnson of past since that injury last year. He's getting a rookie QB that's coming in, as we discussed already. So his big thing with Carson Palmer was he was always checked down to. That's where he was getting all his fantasy points. Rosen's coming in. He's probably going to have to lean on someone. It's not going to be Jermaine Gresham. Jermaine Gresham's going to have an explosion week. But David Johnson has struggled going into that week. He's not put up points. He did 16 points in PPR this week, but like I said, that's not what you drafted. David Johnson, a lot of leagues were first, second, third overall. So at this point, at the beginning of the year, you would have had to trade someone top like Michael Thomas up for him. I think right now you should be able to get him for a wide receiver number 2, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins who's also struggling a little bit at this point. You might be able to pull him in if you have the receivers capabilities to carry that. But I think at this point you could get David Johnson for pretty cheap. And a person that you may be able to trade for him that I may say go for it is Adrian Peterson. Peterson, 2 out of 3 of the week so far, has looked great this year. The third week, though, when he was against a defense that was pretty good against the rush, he was non-existent. And it was a Colts defense. It wasn't even a defense that had a rush defense that's that great. He struggled mightily. I think he ended up with like less than 2 fantasy points or something like that. It was awful. But 2 weeks he's had huge. A lot of people are talking Adrian Peterson. A lot of people are talking fountain of youth at this point. So right now he is one of the highest regarded running backs. You could probably at this point get a lot of value. Adrian Peterson, the problem with him right now is once again he's older, a tougher schedule down the line against good running defense. And he's last couple years he's been injured a lot mid-season about. So at this point I would say get rid of Peterson. If you could get a David Johnson for him, someone would do that swap, go for it. But I think Peterson at this point is at the highest he's going to be, and this is the week that you trade him for a top-end player.
Oh, look at me. All right. My first name is not as big as
his name is
first one, but I think a good person to buy low right now on is Nelson Aguilar. He's got Carson Wentz back, and he was a fantasy stud with Carson Wentz in last year. He's still being kind of not looked at too much because Carson Wentz kind of limped into this week against the Colts, but I think you're going to be able to get pretty much a good value for him now, and it could be a potential big thing for you if you take him now, because I really think Aguilar is, which I never thought I'd say a couple years ago, but I really think he's going to end up turning into one of the top wide receivers with Carson Wentz being healthy. Now speaking of wide receivers, this one is where I kind of go big. I would sell Antonio Brown now. Now, it sounds crazy, because why would you trade the guy who normally is the number one? You really hate this idea. Why would you trade the guy who's the number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh, especially with no running? Well, they got a running game. They got James Conner. The reason I say sell high is because, one, you're going to be getting a lot of value out of Antonio Brown. You could basically probably get 3 stud players for Antonio Brown, because that's what happens with the name. I'm not saying Brown's going to have a drop-off. It's just that he's also losing some yardage because Juju Smith-Schuster's actually been really taken away from him. This is also a Steelers offense who has shown some age. They had a great week against the Kansas City Chiefs, but we all know that that's
And they were at home.
they were at home. That's why. But I really think that you could get great value out of Antonio Brown. He was a first-round pick in every league basically. And, I mean, that's the thing. You could probably get a top running back and maybe even a mid-tier wide receiver just for Antonio Brown.
So, David Johnson and mid-tier, Nelson Aguilar.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if you...
Sold it!
Sure.
I guess.
I think I just completely quieted both of them that quick.
That could work, I guess.
I don't know.
I don't know how to take that trade.
I don't know if I consider Nelson Aguilar
now, if
right now.
Now, if I had Antonio Brown, I would not take that trade. If I had David Johnson and Nelson Aguilar, I would take that trade in a second.
All right, well,
Not obviously Nelson Aguilar.
all right.
Jordan Matthews.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. He had a catch.
Did he really? I didn't even see his catch. Anyway.
Well, my buy low is someone who he's on injury right now. That's Joe Mixon. The first 2 weeks of the season, he looked incredible. He had a lot of good vision. He was making good cuts. He obviously accounted for 41% of the Bengals offense. So he's kind of an afterthought right now because he's injured, and injury players are always, I mean, it's always questionable because, you know, you don't want to give up too much depending who might be hurt.
To also add on to that, because this is also another factor, Giovanni Bernard looked good.
He did.
So many people might be like, that's just the system then.
Right. So potentially you could probably get Joe Mixon for someone, say like one of the bloated players right now, like a Deshaun Jackson. People are very high on Deshaun Jackson right now, especially if he does really well in the Steelers game tonight. Like, in theory, you could probably get Joe Mixon for Deshaun Jackson very easily, especially if Deshaun Jackson plays well.
Yeah, even if he doesn't, I'd still say that would probably be close.
I mean, there's certain players right now that are, you know, playing really well, that can keep up the momentum, that I feel you could probably easily trade for Joe Mixon. And like I said, because he's injured, people aren't really giving much thought into it. But to me, as the season winds down, if he can remain healthy, he could definitely be a boost in, you know, the coming playoffs.
Yeah.
My sell high would be Josh Gordon. He didn't play this week against the Detroit Lions, so I still think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are extremely high on him at this point because of the system, because of Tom Brady, and you just don't know. And
Sorry, we're selling high on Josh Gordon.
Oh my God! Boo! Get him off the screen. Didn't we both make a high joke last week?
Right.
Anyway,
but because he is now with Tom Brady, and I don't even know why this is even being talked about, but people are comparing him to Randy Moss all of a sudden.
Well, if you remember right, Randy Moss coming out of Oakland was pretty awful in Oakland.
I get it, but Randy Moss and Josh Gordon, there's no question. Will I think if Josh Gordon plays all year, stays healthy, keeps his mind in the game, can he be a difference maker for this Patriots team? Absolutely. Can he help your fantasy team? Yeah. But I don't think he's going to be an every week start because Edelman is coming back. You know, Gronk has struggled the last 2 weeks. He is not going to keep struggling. So for me,
you have to cover Edelman when he comes back.
Exactly. So for me, Josh Gordon right now has probably the most value from someone that you're not starting. You're not starting Josh Gordon right now. Even when he was in Cleveland, you weren't starting him. So for me, to get good value out of him right now for a player that's riding your bench is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. Although, like I said, I also would go on the other side of things that if you could get him for really cheap, like if somebody is like, I don't like this guy, he's high all the time, and sells him for cheap, go that way too if you have the roster spot.
I don't know too many people trading for moral values.
Did you see how many people traded for Tim Tebow a couple years ago? Just saying.
Tim Tebow was a fantasy guru.
Remember, didn't we all want to take a trade that happened with Tim Tebow and deny it a couple years ago when it actually happened? When Bradley did it?
That's way too.
Anyway, go ahead, Bryn. You jump us into panics.
Panic?
What?
Vikings offense!
So, these are guys that you should start worrying about because they haven't been performing and maybe they were performing, but maybe someone is coming in that maybe are going to stop their performance.
Josh Gordon.
Are you trying to lead into mine?
No, it's high.
So my panic this week is, well, not this week, but my panic is Chris Hogan. Obviously, we're just talking about Josh Gordon, so it's a great lead into this. Chris Hogan has done bad. Like, for a number one receiver, he's only caught 7 catches for 84 yards. He did get 2 touchdowns, but you have to remember, a lot of that was junk time against the Jaguars, who were easily taking control of the Patriots at that point. I guess yesterday, since they know we're doing on Monday, yesterday Chris Hogan only had 3 catches for 31 yards, and to add on to that, that was only on 4 targets. So he's already losing targets, and he doesn't even have the guys that we just talked about, the Josh Gordon, the Julian Edelman. They're coming. In fact, I think Julian Edelman's got one more game he will not be playing, and he'll be back. And that's normally Tom Brady's handcuff. He loves throwing to Edelman. Edelman always succeeds in New England. So Chris Hogan is just, he was a guy that last year put up fantasy stud numbers, and this year, again, what's that? I could go non-PPR, which would be, that would be 20 points Non-PPR?
Yep, a little over 20.
Yeah, 20 points for non-PPR through 3 weeks. There's guys putting that in 1 week. Panic on Chris Hogan. I'm not going to say drop because we got drops coming up, but I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
My fantasy panic is going back to the Tennessee Titans. You know, this running game is very anemic to begin with, and Derrick Henry is just not cutting it. A lot of people had him very high on the radar this year. I mean, everyone knew when Dion Lewis was signed that was going to cut into his passing yards, but Derrick Henry's not a pass catcher to begin with. You know, he's the bulldozer, the short yardage, the first and second down guy. But even then, he's not getting it done. You know, he's averaged 3 yards a carry. Fantasy-wise, even in a PPR league, he's only averaging 5 fantasy points a week. You know, so to me, that's not getting the job done for someone that you probably took relatively high in the draft.
Like 3rd round?
Yeah.
3rd round, I'd say.
Yeah.
So for me, that type of consistency is something that, you know, I'm not really comfortable with moving forward. It's something that you guys shouldn't be comfortable with moving forward. I think, I'm not saying you want to drop Derrick Henry, but he's simply something that he should be riding your bench until this Titans offense kind of gets figured out. With the injuries to Marcus Mariota, you think they would lean on the running game a little bit more, but if you look at the stats and the total ball control, Dion Lewis is carrying the ball just as much as Derrick Henry, plus he gets the backfield catches. So to me, Dion Lewis is taking far, far more over the backfield than Derrick Henry. So for me, I think it's really time to panic.
Yeah, at this point, though, to be completely fair, I wouldn't use either of them in fantasy. He's taking control, but he's not putting up the points.
As I say, I agree with it, but yeah, in all honesty, you're right. I think the whole Titans offense is a panic.
And let's lead to another running back situation that is. And to be fair, with him talking about 5 yards a carry, this makes mine look like a star compared to
yards a carry.
No, you said 5
3 yards a carry.
Or 3 yards. Whoa, 5 points a game.
Yeah,
I said 5 yards per carry.
Yeah.
5 points a game makes my person look good who has 10 points a game at this point. But Kenyon Drake was drafted a little bit higher than Derrick Henry, had a little bit higher value going into the season. And the first couple weeks, like I said, didn't look great, but he did put up a decent one in week 2, put up a 16-pointer, I think it was, week 2. But overall, week 3 puts up 5 rushes for 3 yards. I think it was 2 catches for 7 yards and had 3 fantasy points. PPR. Non-PPR, it's even worse. In a PPR league, he is only averaging 10 points a week so far this season. And for a lot of people, he is your number 1 guy. He is it, and he has not looked like a number 1 at this point. At this point, stick with him. Their schedule's pretty favorable against the run in the next couple weeks, but it was pretty favorable this week too, and he didn't show up at all, putting up 3 fantasy points PPR this week. So Kenyon Drake, I'm panicking at this point, saying I don't know if I should trade him at this point, but is his value going to ever go up? It's tough, but I panic at this point for Kenyon Drake. So for my drop this week, I am going with Randall Cobb. He literally, all of his points this season have come from 1 big catch, week 1, that gave the Packers the win. That's literally it. At this point, since the last 2 weeks, he has 8 catches for 53 yards, no touchdowns, 12.3 points there. He's not getting the looks anymore. And we kind of saw it last year a little bit, but that glimmer of hope came in that week 1 with that 1 big play. But it's shown since then that he's not going to look, he's not worth it. He's not worth keeping a roster spot. There's plenty of people out there on the waiver wire that you could probably pick up to take his place at this point. And we'll get to waiver wires. Maybe one of us has a wide receiver. Maybe we all 3 have a wide receiver. Who knows? But at this point, I don't think Randall Cobb's worth it to have on your roster at this point. And if you even then, you could probably cut him and re-sign him later in the week or next week if you really like him that much. But he's not worth holding. You could get him back pretty easily.
Right. My fantasy drop of the week is John Ross. You know, Tyler Boyd is coming into his own. You know, they took this guy a few years ago. He's doing really well, kind of coming to his own. The last couple of weeks, he's averaged, almost 20-some fantasy points a week.
Yeah, 24, I think, is his average.
You know, I mean, the guy's looking good. Plus, you still have A.J. Green. You do have the tight ends there, the running backs. So John Ross, to me, kind of feels like the forgotten man on this team. They're not taking those deep shots like they have been with John Ross. So for me, until they start showing consistency and he starts getting targets, I think the last 2 games he's only averaged less than 3 targets a game. You know, so that's not something you really want on. You're not going to start a player like that, other than pretty much hoping for a dart throw that he gets a deep bomb. 2, I mean, you're not really going to waste a bench spot either on a player that's literally getting no targets a game. So for me, I think John Ross is someone that you can drop, keep an eye on him. If the targets start to come back, he's definitely much like Randall Cobb. If you drop him, chances are you can get him back real easily.
Apparently, we're all dropping receivers.
I wonder if we're all signing receivers too.
And in all honesty, the reason I said Mohamed Sanu, who is my drop, is mainly because Calvin Ridley has officially taken the number 2 spot. I mean, that's quite obvious with his 3 touchdown performance against the New Orleans Saints last week. And he's slowly been chipping away at Mohamed Sanu's targets anyways. Sanu only had 2 catches this game on a very explosive week for the Atlanta Falcons, where basically if you were on the team, you're getting the ball.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know Sanu's not probably picked up in a lot of leagues, but there are some leagues that have him, and it's time to just forget him. He was great last year. He was a good little handcuff for Julio Jones, since Jones normally got double covered, and Ryan kept going to Sanu. But Ryan's got 2 favorite targets now, and none of them are Mohamed Sanu, so I'd say drop Sanu now.
Okay, so I hear you guys are going to need wide receivers now. I hear you've dropped 3 wide receivers. So I'm going to pull one that maybe not necessarily a start right away, watch him another week at least, but out of Miami, I would go with, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name. I know I'm just going to lose us a couple viewers, but Joaquin Grant out there seems to be the wide receiver to have out of Miami. Danny Amendola has done next to nothing down there. Bryn's boy, Devontae Barker over here, he's basically done absolutely nothing.
He just got back.
And he did nothing. He did nothing, but Joaquin...
I'm not defending him, but I mean, you can't really say he hasn't done anything when he was out the first 2
Well, you can't, because he literally did nothing in the first 2 games then. Literally, that's the definition of doing nothing. But Joaquin Grant had a monster week this week. He's actually had 2 weeks over 15 points. He all but single-handedly brought the Dolphins back into the game this week. After being down most of it. So they're obviously looking at him. I wouldn't start him every week at all yet. It's play by who he's against. But I mean, he's the receiver right now that's getting the looks there. He's the receiver. He basically took the running back position this week too, in all honesty. He's basically taken Dolphins across the board. So I would get him on your team as a possible future trade bait.
Obviously, if Sean doesn't have Calvin Ridley, that's a definite one as well now.
Oh,
Because,
no doubt.
I mean, he
was
out there.
He was
did
picked
get picked
up
up.
60-some% of the league.
He did get picked up last week because he actually had his somewhat breakout game last week, but he is still out there for some. The name I have, it also depends on what happens tonight. I mean, we for all I know, I could be saying this and then look foolish.
We'll just block him out. He gets injured tonight, and we'll just block his mouth with like a black.
Well,
because one
completely
count.
drop this. But Chris Godwin's a guy who's slowly getting more targets, and also, I mean, even with Deshaun Jackson basically being Fitzmagic's interest there, and Mike Evans also being a heavy target, and OJ Howard, but
Can you name any more?
all 4 of those guys have also been heavily involved with the passing game. Godwin just last week had 5 catches, 54 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, I can't really tell what he's doing against Pittsburgh because I don't know.
You'll know by the time this video starts.
Yeah, you'll know. I'll know whenever the video is uploaded, and I'm either going to be regretting it or applauding myself.
Expect comments from him on the video this week.
But Chris Godwin, I think, is going to be a nice little pickup down the road. I don't know he's going to get you a lot of points early on, but I don't think this surprise of Deshaun Jackson's going to stay long.
Right. The Jackson, D-Jax juice.
Yeah, the D-Jax juice. Well, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. I'm not going to go wide receiver as a fantasy pickup. I'm actually going to go to the running back position. And a player that someone's worth keeping an eye on is Aaron Jones for the Packers. This week, the game script kind of got away from them. They were trailing, so they couldn't really run the football as much. But he had 6 carries for 42 yards, which is in terms of yards per carry, that's better than anything that the Packers have gotten the last few games. He's currently owned in 51% of ESPN football leagues right now, so there's plenty of opportunity to go get him if you don't have him. I think moving forward, we all saw last year when Aaron Jones was playing, he was their go-to running back. So I think this year it'll kind of be the same thing. Ty Montgomery's not burning the world down. Jamal Williams isn't doing much of anything. So I think the running back to own in Green Bay is Aaron Jones. And I think as of right now is the time to grab him and stash him.
Very good. Agreed.
So, as always, we always do who to start and who to sit. So the reason I'm jumping in is because I got my QBs back. So this week, it was kind of hard to actually pick a quarterback to sit that would make sense. But so I went obvious. I'm going to start with the quarterback to sit this Thursday, which hopefully the video is up. If not, then
you get the same argument I had 2 weeks ago.
I was saying if I'm wrong, then no one saw it.
Right.
But I think the quarterback to sit this week is a no-brainer. Don't start Kirk Cousins. I don't think he's going to come back from his disaster. I don't think he's going to have as bad of a game, but I also don't think you're going to be seeing a lot of touchdowns from him. And, it's just a bad matchup. Now, granted, there are a couple secondary pieces missing, so maybe he would alright.
Okay, so are you telling him to start or not?
I still think that the front line is going to get to the Vikings pretty badly. I am saying sit Kirk Cousins, so don't worry. I am saying to sit him. Don't play him. It's against the Rams defense. They're #1 pass defense, and they still look good even with losing both those guys last week against Phillip Rivers. My start this week is someone who I don't think I expected any of us to bring up, but it's against the New Orleans Saints, so it's a very positive matchup. Eli Manning should be a good start this week. He's got a really weak Saints defense. I know they're 2-1, but they're 2-1 because Kamara, Breeze, Thomas, not so much with Ben Watson. But they got a lot of weapons, so Saints, even whenever they struggle on defense, are able to do damage as well still on offense. So Eli Manning should be able to get you a nice little points this week. Odell Beckham is going to probably have a good week this week, and I even say Shepard might actually have a pretty good game this week as well. The only thing that might kind of hurt them a little bit is Evan Ingram. I guess keep an eye on his injury, because if they have him in, then I think that's a must-start tight end as well. But I didn't put them with tight ends because I'm not sure if Ingram's going to be playing. But Eli Manning, start him this week, even if he doesn't play.
Ingram's week to week, so we'll see. So I got running backs here, and my start of the week is Tevin Coleman. Devonta Freeman could be back this week, but coming right off an injury, I don't see much coming out of him. Went into a game against the Bengals. Their Russian defense is at the bottom of the league right now, so he should have a pretty good week. Not just by the run in the game, but he's also is the check down running back who gets a lot of yards there, and PPR gets a lot of catches. So even if Devonta Freeman is suited up this week, I'd still go Tevin Coleman to continue with the hot hand, because he has been solid since Freeman has been out. By the end of the week, I'm not even going to talk much more about him. I think enough has been said about him at this point. Derrick Henry, less than 16 points overall so far in the 3 games. As stated, pretty much 5 points per game at this point. And the Eagles currently have the top rushing defense in the league. So when we say that we're panicking about Derrick Henry, it kind of goes into this week too, that, okay, if he's your top running back, or if he's your number 2 running back, you got to be panicking. You got to look at the waiver wire this week. You got to be desperate this week. That's not a good matchup. Do not start him.
All right, well, for the wide receiver position, my start of the week is Tyler Boyd. Ultimately, A.J. Green's injury status is unknown at this time, so if he's unable to suit up, that's just going to open the potential for Tyler Boyd against an Arizona defense that just got Yeah, Atlanta. Sorry. The Atlanta defense just got completely shredded by Drew Brees. Now, I'm not saying that Andy Dalton is Drew Brees, but we all know Andy Dalton can put those games together where he just turns it on and goes off for 4 touchdowns and 350 yards. So for me, I really like Tyler Boyd in this position. My sit of the week is Quincy Enunwa. One of their revenge games of their revenge tour this year to the Tennessee Titans. You have a rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold going against probably one of the best cornerback tandems in the league. So chances are Enunwa is going to get matched up with either Ramsey or Bouye, depending on where he lines up in the field. Because, let's be honest, the Jets really don't move Enunwa around a lot. They keep him on the outside, in the one slot, on the left and right side of the field. If you were going to start a Jets wide receiver this week, I would probably go like Javon Curse because they like to move him around. But even then, I probably wouldn't recommend any of the Jets wide receivers. But for me, Quincy Enunwa is definitely must sit this week.
All right, time to go to tight ends. Obviously, if Evan Ingram does start, is able to play, that will be actually my start of the week. But
Heyo.
But if he doesn't, there is a good but that you can look at.
That was awful.
That was bad. That sounds disturbing.
This is awful.
Sorry, I creeped myself out. A tight end to start this week, and it's going to be one that probably is going to be looked at with a lot of confusion. I think Jake Butt could actually be a good start this week. He's a tight end for the Denver Broncos, since probably no one knows that. And he's definitely out there in free agency.
Is he owned by anyone?
I highly doubt it. But the Broncos have been trying to get him involved in the pass game a little bit. They obviously they got Case Keenum, so I mean, he's also still young. I'm pretty sure he was actually drafted last year. As
Quit looking at me like I know. I have no idea.
I think he's drafted. You don't know who Jake Butt is? Oh.
That rookie's going places.
But he is going against a weak tight end defense in the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, in all honesty, it's a weak defense of the Kansas City Chiefs in general. They just have a solid offense, kind of like how I've been saying about Drew Brees and New Orleans Saints, where they've been getting torn apart on the defense, but they put up points as well. So I know it sounds like it's a stretch.
It's a stretch.
That's wow.
You just picked him to make him the butt of your jokes.
No, I actually. I said,
oh, see, I can do it too. And mine's not creepy.
Well, yeah, I agree with that part. But Jake Butt against the Chiefs, I think, is actually not a terrible play, especially since right now there's no tight ends have really stood out.
Except Travis Kelce.
Well, 1 week.
Yeah, 1 week.
He had a big week again this week.
Yeah. My sit of the week is someone who we've actually kind of been high on, but I mean,
is it Josh Gordon?
No.
Oh, I'm on it tonight.
No.
Finish it.
But the sit of the week I have Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I think the Jaguars are going to be coming out really ticked off, but the Jets actually have done pretty good against tight ends. They haven't played a lot of great tight ends, but they have one of the lowest tight end defenses this year. And I also don't really trust the guy who hasn't really been putting much anyways, even in solid matchups like against Giants. Didn't do much against them, even though the Giants actually right now are the top tight end defense. But yeah, believe it or
What
not,
point are you trying to make?
I don't know.
I'm so confused where this is going.
Swinging wild.
Anyway, I'll take it off his hand. I know that.
But yeah, no, I just don't. In all honesty, the main reason I'm saying sit Seferian-Jenkins is because he hasn't done much, and I don't see Bortles really getting to really any of his receivers. I think this is going to be a run-heavy game for the Jaguars.
But this is Seferian-Jenkins' return to his previous
It's a
team.
revenge game.
Revenge. Revenge. So I'll take it with the
Jets.
I'll take it because the Jets is a revenge game nowadays.
Yeah.
So I'll take it with the flex. And once again, flex is probably the hardest to come up with because my start in the flex is someone that you might even be able to say is a wide receiver 2 at this point. Mike Williams, at least for this week. Mike Williams went up against the 49ers pass defense, which is among the worst. I think it's 4th to last on the pass defenses right now. Plus, with Garoppolo down, who knows if Beathard's even going to get the ball moving. So, Mike Williams, who has exploded these last 2 weeks, putting up almost 50 points in the past 2 weeks. Didn't do much week 1 and has exploded since then. It shouldn't slow down against the 49ers. He's a great flex play. He's, like I said, he's right on the edge of being a wide receiver 2 going into this week at this point. But right now I'd say Mike Williams for it. And you know, when he was drafted, 15 years ago in the first round by Detroit, we thought it was all over, and now here he is. Here he goes again. Yeah, totally. My sit for the flex of the week, Cole Beasley came back this week. Didn't think he was going to play, and basically it was worthless. He didn't do anything. I think he ended up with 6 points. Detroit,
still more than Derrick Henry's average.
Still more than Derrick Henry. Detroit is actually, and once again, another shocker here, the #1 pass defense after 3 weeks. They're even ahead of the teams that are playing tonight. So, already, that's how good Detroit's been on the pass defense.
Even with the 41-17 game against the
a lot of running.
Jets.
A lot of running.
Pick sixes.
Remember, Isaiah Crowell had a huge run. So yes, they are the #1 pass defense. Cowboys have been struggling. Dak Prescott, I mean, I didn't think he looked good 2 years ago when everyone became huge thing and he won Rookie of the Year. Still think that should have gone to Ezekiel Elliott, but he has not looked like a good quarterback there. They don't really have another choice, and to be honest there, I don't like any Dallas offense for most of the rest of the year. I don't see him getting any better anytime soon, but Cole Beasley against the #1 pass defense for flex, I wouldn't play him.
All right, so we're going to wrap things up now with the defense, start and sit. I'm going to take the cheap route out here for the start. You got to get the Chargers in there. CJ Beathard starting. No Jimmy G.
Every week, by the way, we're now going to all pick we're out against the 49ers.
So now the 49ers are the new Bills?
Yes. Yeah, CJ Beathard last year, when he started in some games, there were a few games where he looked great. You know, he put up some good yards, he had some good throws, things like that. But for the most part, it was a disaster. And now he's taking it on a very opportunistic, like the Chargers defense. They haven't looked the greatest this year, but I think this is a good rebound game for them. You know, especially at home. I think it's going to be a good situation. CJ Beathard hasn't even thrown a football since last year.
It's been a while.
So to me, there's going to be some rust. I just think this is a great opportunity to start the Chargers defense. My defensive sit is Buffalo.
You went really cheap this week, man.
Cheap on the defenses. Do not chase fantasy points with Buffalo. Last week, yes, they looked great. They shut down Minnesota's offense. Are they going to do the same thing in Green Bay? No.
Okay, so one-legged man, though.
All 4 people who had Buffalo's defense are now dropping out.
Hey, there is a millionaire on DraftKings.
I thought my Jake Butt was bad.
I have the best picks this week. The guy who only picked 5 games right last week has the most standout picks for the game.
No, that's a standout pick because it's obvious.
You are not going to start Buffalo defense.
It was going to start last week.
Hey, the guy in DraftKings started.
$1 million.
And he's not going to after this video.
He's never going to say he's watching our videos. That's why. We said anything about Buffalo's defense at all last week.
That's why he started us. Well, that wraps up our videos this week. Sometimes you just gotta take the obvious. Alright. Well,
I changed my start tight end. Obviously start Travis Kelce.
And by the way, Antonio Brown is my new started flex, and my new started running back is Melvin Gordon. Run with it.
Perfect.
Start Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, and by the way, make sure you bench Brett Favre this week, guys. We need to make sure we're not playing anyone that big.
Bench CJ Beathard. Don't chase the fantasy points.
Don't chase the points.
You're right. Just bench LeVeon Bell next week.
Yeah.
We got this now.
Don't chase the
Don't chase it. Don't chase the Jets.
That's right.
Anyway, go ahead. Someone finish it. Someone close it out here.
Alright guys, well we appreciate you. Please like and subscribe to our videos. We will be coming out with more content next week. As always, we are the Fantasy Forecasters. We predict it just as good as the weatherman.